Hello, everyone, and welcome to season 3 of Tears and Tulle, Tears and Taffeta Talk. This is a podcast where we interview the faces behind the taffeta cape and the tulle skirt. And I'm so excited to be here with you today, interviewing my friend Mike, who was one of the first participants to wear the taffeta cape. Hello, Mike, and welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. We start every podcast out with a Tears and Tulle, Tears and Taffeta moment of life. And for anyone who's just tuning in, listening from the car, wherever you might be, we say something we really love about ourselves, and then we follow with a tears moment. And then we always end with especially then, saying that we're showing up from within the harder places of life to reconnect with our magic, and that we're doing that in both. And so, again, if you're listening to this podcast, you're welcome to play along at home. And for example, you may say, I am kind, even when I'm feeling really frazzled, especially then. I am smart, even when I forget my Netflix password, especially then. So, Mike, I'm inviting you to give us your Tears and Taffeta moment of the day. And I would love you to share that with our viewers and
Yeah.
listeners.
Oh, I love this practice. I am vulnerable even when I am terrified and want to close up and run away and tout all of my accomplishments to try to defend myself, especially then.
Especially then. Thank you so much. And I am here with you in that space. And I love that you're right away sharing from the heart. When I received your photos and your story via email, I opened them up. I read them like I always do. And I read them again out loud, your words, because I wanted to get closer to them. I wanted to really get close to that experience you had, because I felt like you were sharing your whole heart in that moment. You were saying, okay, this is where I come from. This is what I've been through. And this is what wearing the cape means to me in this moment. So I would love to hear a little bit more about how you felt from the moment that cape arrived, and then what your experience was when you actually put it on.
Yeah, I didn't know quite what to expect, and it was large. It was a very large cape, much larger than I expected, and it was like a parachute. And that was my first kind of thought and experience of it, is that I am carrying this parachute. And I thought it was such a beautiful metaphor because, growing up, as I mentioned in my story, we hear about superheroes who wear these capes and they're very stoic, right? There's limited emotion that these men have, often men, very masculine. And so there was this idea of a cape being something that hides us or that protects us from actually sharing what's underneath. And this felt very different because it was like a parachute. And I got this sense that, I have that ability to hide myself from the world or fly, right? To fly like a parachute and to express myself. And so much what I loved about the design of the cape is how bright and colorful it is. So not only can it fly, but it can express itself. And that's really what flight and authenticity is about. And so it felt like this opportunity to fly. And I remember I was trying to get some air under it. It wasn't a very windy day, but I was like running up and down my driveway to bring some air into it to really feel this sense of flight. Because to me, that's what heroism is. That's what vulnerability and strength is, to be able to allow ourselves to fly, even in those moments when we just want to use the cape to hide from the world. And that just felt really powerful to me.
Oh my gosh, I love the visual of you running in it and really feeling that sense of flight. I also love the idea of this like parachute idea, because when I think of a parachute, I think of someone taking flight and then slowing down. Do you feel like there's moments in life where we fly and we need to slow down?
Oh, for sure. I think early part of my life was very adrenaline based, right? So it was like accomplish, do more, achieve more. And I think even this idea of flight can be sort of pathologized. It can be this idea of like, I've just got to do tons of self help and just push and push and push. And there's still this idea of trying to get somewhere, right? And so this parachute metaphor of slowing and kind of from this higher vantage point, watching the scene beneath and really taking it in and soaking in the moments. And I think, if even if we go after our scariest, toughest things in life, if we never take a moment to pause and reflect, we can't integrate or receive it. And so we're just going and going and going and never actually experiencing our life. And I think what I love about this is not only its flight, it's not, Superman flying around the earth so quickly, it's allowing us to slow down and pause and experience our own emotions.
Yeah. Yeah. While you were saying all that, I was thinking of your story that went viral. Could you share a little bit about how that might have been a time where things moved really fast in your life and then clearly slowed down where you were able to really connect with it seems to connect with yourself on an even deeper level?
Yeah, so it's quite a story, and I'll back up a little bit even before what I wrote to give you some context. I was pretty successful early in life, and so by 22 years old, I had been zooming, and I had started a successful public relations agency with some really big executives in the space. So I worked with healthcare politicians, billionaires, celebrities. I worked with a lot of different people. And about 3 years later, I was in my mid 20s, I woke up and I started vomiting blood. And that didn't stop for about 2 months straight. So every day I was vomiting blood. It got so bad that one day I went to work and I had an accident. I tried to make it to the bathroom in time. I didn't. And I, quite frankly, shit my pants at work. And it was mortifying, as you can imagine. And I didn't even have my cell phone on me, so I couldn't text anyone to help me. And I was shaking and looking at myself in the mirror. And I remember, of course, I had my freak out and I just wished this didn't happen. But eventually I realized it did happen. And the sooner I accept that, the sooner I have the power to do something about this moment. And so, best I could, I cleaned myself off. I snuck out of that bathroom, grabbed my cell phone, snuck back in, and texted a few people like the office manager to put an out of order sign up in the bathroom, friends to buy me pants. I called a cab, and I snuck out the back door. And I knew that I was in trouble. I thought I was going to die. It isn't normal to vomit blood daily. I was going to the hospital just to get fluids because I was dehydrating from this. And at the time, I had two roommates who were kind of random roommates. One was my older sister's friend who had just moved to the city, and another was a guy I knew from college who I was somewhat friendly with. And so my older sister's friend, she had a boyfriend and she wasn't around very often. And by default, this guy I knew from college, he was around. And he was on pharmacy residency, so he knew the medical system. And I couldn't drive myself. I mean, I couldn't even leave the house without potentially having an accident. So he became my de facto caretaker. And he would drive me to my appointments. Soon enough, I couldn't get off the couch, so he would cook me dinner. He would clean up blood when I was vomiting blood. And about 2 months into this process, I realized I was developing feelings for him. And this felt a little strange for me because up until this point in my life, I had never been with a man, and to my conscious knowledge, never been interested in a man. And so, it didn't feel sexual or even romantic, but it felt like something was different about this relationship now. And, to get inside my mind at the moment, you have to understand, I was afraid I was going to die. So there was a part of me that thought, like, am I just scared I'm going to die and this is like a human within proximity? Like, I don't know what this is. And so I wasn't really clear on what this was. And I probably, had it been any other time in my life, would have brushed it under the rug and thought, okay, no big deal, move on. But I was afraid I was going to die. And so I was doing some radical therapies. I was writing handwritten letters to every member of my family saying everything I've never said out loud. Just to try to, heal myself. If I'm vomiting blood, I can't stuff things down, so I've got to let it all come up. And so I got the nerve, his name's Garrett, and I got up the nerve one day to speak up. And I didn't know if he was going to want to punch me in the face. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I said, I need to speak up here because I could die tomorrow and I cannot die holding this. And so eventually I got up the nerve and I said, Garrett, I don't know how you react to this. We've gotten really close over the last few months. And it doesn't feel sexual or romantic, but I feel something. Our relationship has shifted, and I don't know what to do with that, but I feel like I have to tell you. And he, thankfully, is the most thoughtful person in the entire world. And he said, okay, I don't know how I feel about this, but let me sit with it. Let me, think about this. And of course, I'm right now condensing, months down to a few minutes. So it was a little bit more than this, but a few conversations and emails later, we decided to try to make a relationship work. And we were not exclusive at first. We still dated women. We were not physical with one another, but we wanted to explore, can this be possible? What is this? And so we did that for about a year and a half without telling really anyone, just a few close friends. It's the hardest year and a half of my life because while this was going on, I knew I needed to leave my job. Because if you're vomiting blood, probably not the job for you. So I decided to give a year's notice. Now, I never recommend anyone listening do that, but I was an owner of this company and I felt like I had to get in a good spot. And so I spent that year in nutrition school, herbalism school, spiritual schools. I mean, it was hellish. I was in my first same-sex relationship, trying to heal myself, working full-time, going to like 3 different schools. It was absolute hell. But I just knew when this year was up, I was going to create something. And I had no idea what it was. And I wanted to get all the knowledge I could. And so the year finished. And it just so happened that it was about the same time that Garrett and I decided we were going to tell our family about us. Because it was real now. We had moved in, just the 2 of us. And we thought, okay, this is something serious. Because before that, we weren't sure, like, what if I get better and I'm just not interested anymore? So we kind of wanted to really take this slowly and understand it. And so I left my job. I told my family. I'll never forget my dad's reaction. He said, so let me get this straight. You're leaving your job and you found yourself a rich boyfriend? You are so smart. And that was his only reaction to it. I thought, okay, beautiful. Not everybody was as supportive, but, we won't name names today. People got there. And so anyway, as this is all going on, I decided,
It's Tears and Taffeta. It's the Tears and Taffeta. I'm waiting for my dogs to do the
good,
same
because
thing.
I think my neighbor must have just come home, and of course, Roscoe. Anyway, they're getting excited about the story. So in this, thank you. So in this, situation here, I started being an herbalist and a health coach to Boston's entrepreneurs because I knew these people. I had gotten sick. I wanted to help these people. And if I'm being honest with you, I didn't love it. I did not love it. I wasn't making a lot of money. It wasn't very fun for me. And I thought, well, shit. I just gave up an amazing job. I had my future set up for me. I've got to do something. And so I decided, I've always been a writer. Let me write. Like, I will write my own blog, not my relationship, not yet, but about my experiences. I was successful at a young age. I got sick. Success wasn't what it was cracked up to be. I can talk about this. And so I started a blog about this, just telling my stories. And the blog got decently popular. And 3 months later, I got an email out of the blue from a publisher who said, can I give you a book deal? And I was like, what? Does this happen? Like, I didn't pitch you. Okay, yes, if you want to pay me to do what I'm already doing, I can do that, sure. And I thought, you know what? This has got to be my life purpose. The universe is just handing me this on a silver platter. This has got to be it. And so I, start writing this book, turn in the manuscript, and in it, my publisher, who was queer herself, really pushed me, said, your relationship is an important part of the story. We've got to put this into the story. So I said, okay. So I turned that in, and then I thought, oh, shit. Like, I have to tell people in my life about this. They can't find out on the shelves of Barnes & Noble. I have to tell them. And so I said, okay, I've got to do this. And it felt exhausting to have one-on-one conversations with people and have to deal with whatever emotional reactions they're going to have. So I, being a writer, got the brilliant idea that I'll blog about it. Because if I write in my blog, some people in my life read that already. Great. They can all have their emotional freakouts behind my back, talk shit behind my back, and then they can come to me when they're processed. That just feels so much safer and better. And so I decided to write this in my blog. I go to bed that night. The blog gets picked up by a national publication, and when I wake up in the morning, 100,000 people had shared this blog post.
Wow.
literally millions of people were talking about my sex life. And it was, I can't quite describe how overwhelming it was because it was really coming from all sides. I mean, it was people telling me that I'm a liar and this isn't true. On one hand, people telling me I'm not, involved in the queer community and I don't belong. Then I have other people inviting me to speak at pride events. I mean, people ask me if I've been sexually abused. Like, it was just everything you can imagine, literally thousands of emails in my inbox. I couldn't possibly read them all. And I have missed calls from Huffington Post, NPR, wanting to talk to me about this. And I'm sitting there like, you're asking me to defend a sexuality that, quite frankly, I'm not clear on. And I don't, want to have this. I mean, there is actually, it's still happening, a play coming out in New York about us in the spring this year, which is now 8 years later. But that's happening. So it was a really crazy moment. And after a few interviews that I did on it, I just shut down because it was really hard. I remember being on an NPR interview, and in between being on air, the host said to me, "I just don't believe you." And I was like, okay, I don't know what to say. Like, I'm not asking you to believe me, but why did you ask me on the show? And so it was a really interesting, hard moment. My therapist certainly got a phone call that week. Excuse me. And it was just intense. And for years, I didn't want to talk about this because although I love Garrett, we are married today. We are still together. We've been married for years now. We've been together for about a decade. I was more than this. I did important work. I did things I love about the world. And so to realize every interview I did was only about my relationship felt really challenging and stifling for me. And today, we are now almost 8 years since that moment. I can talk about this freely, and also the conversation on sexual fluidity, pansexuality, bisexuality has evolved, thankfully, not great yet, but evolving to a point where, it felt like, okay, I can come out and start talking about this. But it was, and still is sometimes, an intense experience. And even all these years later, I still get emails or Instagram messages weekly from people saying, that article meant something to me and I am going through something similar and asking for advice.
Wow, what a story. Thank you so much for letting us to go in a little bit deeper on your experience. And I know it's inspiring me, so I'm hoping that it will inspire others who are listening, to go a little deeper and connect, especially if they're in, these stressful, high-paced situations that might not be serving them in their life at this point. I can't believe we're at time already. I want our viewers to know what you're doing in the world. I've been stalking your Instagram quite regularly, actually, and really enjoying what you're doing. Can you share with people a little bit how to find you, what you might have going on? And you mentioned this play. Oh my gosh, my brain is trying to wrap around what a cool concept that is for you and for all of us.
Of course. Yes. So, what I do for work now in the world is I'm really interested in this exploration of people's sensitivities. And what I mean by that is, so many people will come to me and say, Mike, my life purpose is to be a life coach or to be a writer. And I'll say, oh my God, that is fantastic. But if you can achieve something, that implies you can also fail it. That doesn't make sense. How could you fail your purpose? And furthermore, if you can achieve it, it implies you didn't have your purpose as a baby. And that doesn't make sense. Like, how do you, of course you have a purpose as a baby. So what I do in my work is I really help people to map their lived experiences and understand who they are, what they're sensitive to even since birth, and how, if I'm sensitive to vulnerability, I'm going to notice vulnerability in every single moment of my life. My deepest trauma is going to be around that. My greatest gifts are going to be around that because I can split hairs and see more. The work I do in the world is around that. Every time I feel vulnerable and all of my other sensitivities, I feel deeply purposeful. Things work out for me. I use my greatest gifts. Moments of trauma are when I feel the opposite of those things. And so people will use this work to explore their identity and sexuality, to build businesses. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, artists, writers, comedians, healers, you name it. people who are exploring their spiritual path and understanding trauma, overcoming, sexual assault. There's a whole bunch of different ways that this work is utilized. And I do work with different populations on different issues. But people can always hire me one-on-one to map. And for me, it takes me about 2.5 hours to map a person's entire life and really boil it down to the 5 or 6 core sensitivities that when they understand those, it's like a key. It just unlocks everything and understands why and how every moment happened. And so I loved our beginning, Tears and Taffeta exercise because it's so my work, right? That I am vulnerable even when these things happen. I give myself permission because that's who I am. And I can't help but share it. It just spills out of me. And it's my greatest gift to the world. And so really helping people to understand what their greatest gifts are and how we can share those and connect them and build a life around them. And you can always find me on Instagram. I'm somewhat newly there. I'm just coming out of my shell because for years I was off social media after all of this. But my name is just at Mike Iamele. Come find me. Or you can come to my website. And if you are interested in this idea of mapping sensitivities and you want to taste, we always have a free worksheet and training at mikeiamele.com/map, M-A-P. You can just go down there, download the worksheet, and start to, for free, map your own sensitivities.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for being here. It has been such a treat. I've been looking forward to this, and I thank you for your vulnerability and your magic, quite frankly, Mike. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor.